This will be my first response to the CES letter, so I'll bring this up. And as I said, I will not be addressing any of this introduction, so let's get down. The first category is titled Book of Mormon. And the first question right here states, what are 1769 King James Version edition errors doing in the Book of Mormon, a purported ancient text? Errors which are unique to the 1769 edition that Joseph Smith owned. Okay, first a few observations before I actually respond to the question. The first thing is that you will note in the letter itself there are no examples given. Now the letter is addressed to a director of the church educational system, so it may be assumed that he already has the information. But for the general membership it is unlikely that they have the information or even understand what they're talking about in the terms of these errors that they are claiming. However, I will say, on this website, I found this website where you got the PDF copy, and if you look at the text right here, it has a footnote attached to the word error, and if you click on that, it brings up this here, which is an essay dealing with this subject, and it has this list of examples, primarily from the Isaiah chapters in 2nd Nephi, though I do believe the last example is from Matthew, but I am not going to address all of these examples because it would just take too long. So, but there are two other observations. The question states that these supposed errors are unique to the 1769 edition. So I decided to look at the other editions, both of the King James Bible and of other English translations that have been made over the years. And what I found is that there's nothing unique about it. There are some slight differences in wording, but no difference in meaning. And when it comes to the King James Bible, every edition has the same wording even, not just same meaning. So I found these PDF copies of each edition, and just quickly I want to take you through these, show you what I mean. So first of all, here we have the 1769 edition, and this is the standard one. It is the one that Joseph Smith would have had available to him, and it is the one that the church still uses in its publications. What it states here, this is, as you can see in the example again, the first example, Isaiah chapter 2 verse 9 compared to 2nd Nephi chapter 12 verse 9. I'm using this one as an example. The same thing can be said of all of them, really. And I will mention one other thing in just a moment. So first of all, doing the 1769 edition as it reads, and the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself, therefore forgive them not. Now according to this, the error is that it should say the mean man boweth not down. So, okay, this is what they say. This is the 1769 edition. Now, if we go over one more, this is, first of all, the oldest version of the Bible that is completely translated in English. This is called the Great Bible, commissioned by Henry VIII in 1540, and the verses are not the same, but if you look right here, you can see what it says here is, there kneeleth the man, there falleth the man down before them. But ye, O Lord, wilt not leave them unpunished. Exact same meaning, slightly different wording, but this is just a different style of writing it. You know, this is different translators had a different style. We then go to the Geneva Bible of, I believe, 1548. And you can see here, verse 9, and a man bowed himself, and a man humbled himself, therefore spare them not. It's, again, same meaning, Slightly different wording. We go to the next one real quick. This is the Bishop's Bible, commissioned by Queen Elizabeth in 1560, I believe. And it says, "There kneeleth the man, there falleth the man down before them." Note, the brackets before them means this is an insert by the translators, not from the original text. "Therefore, forgive them not." So again, same meaning, different wording. We can go then to the next one, which is the 1611 King James, or the very first edition of the King James, and it says, "And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself, therefore forgive them not." This is the exact same wording as the 1769 edition. Spelling might be slightly different from one to the next, but it's the same exact wording. So again, this one here is the 1909 King James edition. What does it say? "And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself, therefore forgive them not." Exact same wording as the 1769. Then, moving on to other non-King James Version text, this is the Young's literal translation, made in 1862. And it reads, "And the low boweth down, and the high is humbled, and thou acceptest them not." So again, this is slightly different wording, but exactly the same meaning. So, from the very first English translations of the Bible until after the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, every edition that I can find has had the exact same translation. Slightly different wording depending on who is translating it, but the same meaning, almost the same wording. So if one says bows, one says kneels. They mean the same thing. So this is not unique to the 1769 version. But the reason I wanted to look at this first example is because there's something unique about this one. The other examples Joseph Smith kept, but you will note here now, they compare this to the 1830 edition of the Book of Mormon. So right here, in the 1830 edition of the Book of Mormon, you can see this. What does it say? It says, "And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself not. Therefore forgive him not." See, Joseph Smith added that negative in there. Great man humbleth him. All the King James versions, all the other translations say, mean man boweth down, and great man humbleth himself. In 1830, Joseph Smith had changed this to "the great man humbleth himself not." Now, they use the 1830 edition. They say, "Oh, you got to use this because this is one that Joseph Smith." But the problem is that Joseph Smith actually altered it. He went in and he corrected it. He saw errors had crept in the process of getting it printed, and in 1837, he had a second edition published. And you'll note that in this 1837 edition, what does it say? "And the mean man boweth not down, and the great man humbleth himself not. Therefore forgive them not." So modern scholars claim that this is a mistranslation, that it should say "boweth not down." But every translation up until the modern day had the same meaning, same translation, being "boweth down." But Joseph Smith went in and changed it to "boweth not down." Now the other examples they give, he left. They all say the same thing that the King James Version says. But this one doesn't. And that's I wanted to point that out, that modern scholars, and they always want to go to the 1830 edition, but they fail to recognize that Joseph Smith himself said that that was an error. It had crept in there somehow between him dictating the words to Oliver Cowdery and the scribes and the printing. Somewhere in that process, an error crept in, and he corrected it. And now in the modern day, they're saying, "Oh, this is what it should say." How did Joseph Smith know? Now, I want to actually go back to the question itself that was asked. And let me reread this here, just the beginning part. What are 1769 King James Version errors doing in the Book of Mormon? Now, I want to just briefly touch on this because it is a very important point. And if you'll recall in my introduction, I listed 5 truths that are my anchor, that say these things are true, therefore if these things are true, then what is the correct and best response to these questions? And the 5th one I listed was that the prophets speak for God, and what they say is the will of God. It is the truth as revealed by God to man on earth. So you ask the question, or they ask the question, why are these errors in the Book of Mormon? What this really boils down to, what the question is really asking, in essence, is why does the prophet Joseph Smith disagree with modern scholars? That's the real question. Modern scholars say this is an error. Joseph Smith says it's not. Joseph Smith said this is the right translation. He wrote it in the Book of Mormon. He put it in his inspired version of the Bible. He says that's right. Scholars say no, that's wrong. And the question is, why does Joseph Smith disagree with the scholars? And the answer to that question is very simple. The answer is to flip it over and ask instead, why don't the scholars agree with the prophet? Because we know the prophet speaks for God. Therefore, what the prophet is saying is right. If Joseph Smith translated it to say that, then that is the correct translation, and these scholars are wrong. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what their learning is. It doesn't matter what their education is. They're wrong because the prophet said they're wrong. It's as simple as that. If the prophet says that it is right, then the scholars are wrong, because the prophet speaks for God. That is my answer, my response to the question of why the King James errors are in the Book of Mormon. Simply put, they're not errors because the prophet said they're not. And I will conclude here and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.